22-year-old Martinez Bosenko, a former TGI Fridays chef, went to a Leeds music festival in August of 2018 with plans to sell various illegal substances to fellow revelers. As would be revealed in subsequent court proceedings, Bosenko had recently lost his job and started dealing drugs as a way to replace his income. Prior to attending the festival, the young man allegedly partook of some of his supply of cocaine, MDMA, and cannabis. In his heavily impaired state, Bosenko accidentally texted an itemized pricing guide for his drug stash to a police officer. Security personnel at the festival also observed him smoking cannabis in the grime tent. Consequently, he was arrested and charged with possession and intent to supply a Class A drug. Law enforcement seized over $4,000 worth of illicit substances that he planned to distribute at the festival. Bosenko also reportedly carried business cards reading Flavortown LS6 in reference to the area of Leeds where he resided. The young man ultimately pleaded guilty to his charges in Leeds Crown Court. As punishment, he was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. Number 6. Katrina Workman. The police in Mims, Florida, received a call about a woman who fell asleep behind the wheel while parked outside of a Raceway gas station on September the 26th of 2023. Upon arrival at the scene, Brevard County Sheriff's deputies found the woman strung out in her vehicle. They observed her trying to hide a bag containing several illicit substances, including methamphetamine and fentanyl. The suspect, identified as Katrina Workman, was arrested and taken to the county jail for processing. While she was being booked, she reportedly denied having any contraband on her person. However, deputies found a bag of fentanyl concealed in her buttocks. Workman was charged with possession of a controlled substance without a prescription, possession of methamphetamine, and introducing a controlled substance into a county detention facility. Her bond was set at $10,000. The Brevard County Sheriff's Office uploaded a tongue-in-cheek Facebook post mocking Workman. The post read, "Rule number 1, don't be a drug dealer. Rule number 2, no matter what, don't be a drug dealer in Brevard County. Rule number 3, if you are going to deal drugs, don't fall asleep behind the wheel. Rule number 4, even if you hide drugs in your butt, the cops will still find them." Number 5. Tim Sheehan. On the morning of June the 18th of 2017, a fight broke out inside the Field Bar in Neasden, northwest London. Among the brawlers was the pub's owner, 42-year-old Tim Sheehan. Although details regarding the fight were sparse, CCTV cameras captured much of the skirmish, which erupted following an argument between Sheehan and another man. Eventually, a group of men joined the fight as bar stools were tossed and drinks were sent flying. Despite the dust-up unfolding before them, the staff went about their business as though nothing was happening. Sheehan's wife, Jakita Janisoskine, was one of the workers on duty at the time. A couple of minutes after the brawl dissipated, Sheehan stormed behind the bar and grabbed his wife by the hair, seemingly out of nowhere. He proceeded to drag her to the other side of the counter as she tried clinging to the beer taps. Sheehan then left Jakita reeling on the floor and walked off. He posted CCTV footage of the attack on Facebook, writing in the caption, "Wife sorted, LOL." The post was later taken down and Sheehan was arrested on suspicion of assault. Though authorities failed to provide much context for the incident, they did report that it was believed to be domestic related. It also emerged that leading up to the bar fight and assault of his wife, Sheehan had been drinking from his pub's supply of alcohol, which likely contributed to his aggressive and erratic behavior. Number 4. Deja Hall. On December the 6th of 2016, Arizona woman Deja Hall crafted a photo collage and posted it to Facebook, marking the 4th anniversary of her sobriety after many years of drug addiction and drug dealing. The 26-year-old captioned the collage with, "The top left is me in full-blown addiction. The bottom left is me the day I was arrested." That day was her grandfather's birthday in December of 2012. By that time, Hall, who'd begun experimenting with painkillers at the age of 17, developed a heroin addiction that cost her $240 per day. As she continued to fall into bad crowds and develop harmful habits, she also started smoking and injecting crystal meth, according to subsequent reports. While Hall was visiting her grandfather on his birthday, he told her that Her self-destructive behavior was hurting him. She vowed to get clean, but within hours found herself in handcuffs, having been arrested on felony warrants. She spent the following 2 years in prison. While behind bars, Hall expressed a renewed motivation for her to finally clean up her act, thus kickstarting her life of sobriety. In her commemorative social media post, the young woman revealed that she earned a bachelor's degree and gave birth to a child in the years since her release. Number 3. Amber Chauncey. Early on August the 4th of 2023, Escambia County Sheriff's deputies executed a traffic stop at the intersection of Davis Highway and North Cross Lane in Pensacola, Florida. A K-9 unit was deployed to search the vehicle, which was being driven by 29-year-old Amber Chauncey. The dogs sniffed out more than 100 grams of methamphetamine and other felony narcotics. The woman was consequently arrested and booked at the Escambia County Jail on 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance without a prescription, 1 count of possession of cocaine, and 1 count of methamphetamine trafficking. It was Chauncey's second arrest in a matter of months. Back on March the 3rd, local law enforcement went to the woman's residence in order to serve an out-of-state search warrant. While en route to Chauncey's home, officers reportedly observed her driving away with a child in a grey Jeep. The vehicle, which had a broken tail light, was pulled over at the intersection of West St. Joseph Avenue and Pace Boulevard. Under the Jeep's floorboards, police found multiple clear plastic bags with a powdery residue. A soda can with a piece of balled-up tin foil was also recovered. The vehicle was impounded, and officers executed the search of Chauncey's home, where they discovered additional illegal substances and multiple scales. In the end, Chauncey was facing a litany of charges for the use and sale of narcotics, as well as a count of child neglect without great bodily harm. Today's topic was requested by Wild Disney. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Allison Coquit. In December of 2019, Australian woman Allison Coquit penned an article for ABC News detailing her years-long battle with alcohol addiction. According to Coquit, she grew up in a dysfunctional household in New South Wales. Alcoholism and mental illness ran rampant in her family, and as a result, she was an angry child who had trouble with authority. During her formative years, Coquit used alcohol to feel normal. She would drink whenever she felt a strong emotion, positive or negative, and even started seeking out employment opportunities that would enable her to drink on the job. Eventually, Coquit started working in bars as an exotic dancer, allowing her to be intoxicated at all times without anyone questioning her. Coquit lived in the UK for a time, but ultimately returned to Australia in her late 20s. While working in King's Cross, she started using cocaine pretty heavily and eventually began selling drugs to bankroll her habit. In the article, Coquit labeled her life in Sydney as a cycle of drinking, using, selling. One day, just before Christmas in 2015, she stayed home from work because of a migraine. She received a text from colleagues at the Bada Bing Club, where she worked. The message simply read, "Raid." As it would soon emerge, 2 of Coquit's co-workers had been arrested as part of a police sting. Shortly after receiving the mysterious text, the woman heard a knock at her front door. The police had arrived to arrest her on a charge of ongoing supply, which carried a maximum sentence of 20 years behind bars. Over a period of 8 days, Coquit had allegedly supplied cocaine to undercover detectives 9 different times, both at her place of work and at a local cafe. Following her arrest, Coquit spent Christmas and about a month thereafter in the Brady wing of Silverwater Women's Correctional Center. She was then moved to Dilwinea Prison in Windsor, where she served the remainder of her sentence. She was released after 14 months and subsequently embarked on a new life path characterized by her newfound sobriety. Our release on When Derelicts Go Wrong is tuned up for you immediately after number 1. Stick around if you are in the mood for some more They Will Kill You Today. Number 1. Scott David Weaver. Following a night out, Australian drug dealer Scott David Weaver returned to his apartment in North Gosford, New South Wales, at about 7 a.m. on December the 20th of 2019. The 40-year-old, who'd been selling and using the drug ice, was accompanied by his girlfriend, Yolanda Howlett. They proceeded to argue about drugs. with the dispute escalating to the point where Howlett armed herself with a knife. Weaver managed to disarm her, at which point he went into the living room to confront fellow drug dealer Larry Wright, aged 67. Weaver believed that Wright held a romantic interest in his girlfriend, a suspicion that had allegedly been brewing for several months. The two men argued, and Weaver stabbed his rival multiple times. Wright sustained 6 stab wounds in total, with evidence indicating that the attack was determined and desperate. The most significant of Wright's injuries were a wound to the chest that punctured his lung and a wound to the left leg that severed the femoral artery. The leg wound likely left him beyond saving without immediate medical attention. Following the stabbing, Weaver chose not to contact the emergency services and instead bought more drugs with his girlfriend. In the immediate aftermath, Weaver denied having any knowledge of Wright's whereabouts, including to the man's daughters. He also made efforts to wipe any trace of himself from the crime scene and dispose of the murder weapon. Wright's daughters were the ones to encounter his lifeless body at the apartment. On December the 28th, law enforcement moved to arrest Weaver, who resisted and was subdued with pepper spray. In court, the man tried arguing that Wright had first attacked him, which was disputed with the victim's toxicology report showing that he was on heroin at the time. Weaver also claimed that he'd only intended to attack Wright with his fists, but was forced to use the knife to defend himself. Weaver initially pleaded guilty to manslaughter, but in the end he was convicted of murder. He fought for a reduced jail sentence and was ultimately given a non-parole prison term of 18 years and 6 months. Number 8. Germaine Foster. On October the 8th of 2021, a homeless mugger swiped an unnamed 29-year-old woman's phone at West 41st Street and Broadway in New York City. The suspect, later identified as Germaine Foster, began making his getaway across Times Square. As he sprinted through the crossroads of the world, Foster slammed into Maria Ambrosio, a 58-year-old oncology nurse from New Jersey. The woman who'd reportedly been preparing to see her family for the first time since the onset of the pandemic was knocked to the pavement and began frothing at the mouth after suffering severe head trauma. She was subsequently declared brain dead, and 2 days after the incident, her family pulled her off life support. Foster's robbery and felony assault charges were thus upgraded to murder. His mother, who chose to remain nameless, expressed doubts that he was a thief, but confirmed he had no fixed address at the time of the incident. His stepfather reported that he suffered from mental health issues, which had allegedly worsened since he'd lost his biological father, who was his primary caretaker, to COVID-19 related complications. 26-year-old Foster's spree had allegedly begun prior to the cell phone theft. Earlier in the day, he'd barged into a woman's apartment on 6th Avenue and 38th Street, sat on her couch and declared himself to be an African prince. He then took $15 and fled, triggering the chain of events that would end in Ambrosio's death. Number 7. Michael Kreiner. On April the 7th of 2016, law enforcement in Austin, Texas, found the body of first-year student Haruka Weiser in Waller Creek on the University of Texas campus. It was determined that she'd been abused and had had her head beaten against a hard object before being fatally strangled with a nylon strap. The 18-year-old had last been seen leaving UT's drama building after dance practice, as investigators subsequently learned from surveillance footage. While heading home in the evening of April the 3rd, the student was followed by a man. Shortly before 10 p.m., he parked the red woman's bike he was riding and then went after Weiser down a path along the creek. He re-emerged in view of the camera at 11:25, limping and carrying a duffel bag, which was later identified as belonging to Weiser. A few hours later, the Austin Fire Department responded to a small fire in a vacant lot near campus. Homeless teenager Michael Kreiner was found sleeping at the scene. By that point, the authorities hadn't yet learned of Weiser's murder. Kreiner had been burning items at the scene, and he was found in the possession of a silver laptop, which emergency responders considered suspicious given his derelict status. The authorities took Kreiner to a non-profit youth center called LifeWorks. When the surveillance footage was released, firefighters and another witness found that the person in the video strongly resembled Kreiner. Evidence found at the scene of the fire also tied him to the student, and he was arrested for murder. Kreiner pleaded not guilty and took the stand in the ensuing trial, with his ensuing demeanor described as disturbing. He giggled at times when talking about his school life and claimed that he wanted to be a writer using adult material for entertainment. A journal entry called Therapy Gone Wrong made him what he admitted was his handwriting graphically described scenes of violence and abuse. He was ultimately found guilty of capital murder on June the 20th of 2018 and sentenced to life in prison with parole available after 40 years served. Number 6. Semi Williams. Florida teenager Ryan Rogers left his home in Palm Beach Gardens on November the 15th of 2021 to go for a ride on his bike. At around 7:30 in the evening, Rogers was heading south on Central Boulevard. Simultaneously, as confirmed by cell phone records and surveillance camera footage, 39-year-old derelict Semi Williams was heading north on the boulevard. Their paths crossed, and investigators would later determine that Williams, a man who struggled with severe mental illness, stabbed the teen to death. His body was found in a grassy area near the Interstate 95 overpass. When deputies went to take Williams into custody on first-degree murder charges, an altercation ensued. In the course of it, he alluded to the notorious Tuskegee experiment, when health branches of the US government purposefully left hundreds of cases of syphilis untreated in the African American community in order to observe the disease's effects. Williams was eventually overpowered, and as he was being placed in handcuffs, called one of the officers a white devil. A reported schizophrenia sufferer, Williams regularly posted short clips to his YouTube channel. In them, he expressed beliefs that he was being threatened, persecuted, and stalked as part of a wider conspiracy. On the day of Rogers' fatal stabbing, he'd posted a clip in which he talked about implants in his body, which were actively used to monitor him. In a chilling video from the day after Rogers was killed, Williams claimed to have been attacked the previous night, saying, "They had people ride past me on bikes." According to updates from April of 2022, 2 psychologists had found him mentally competent to stand trial for the murder. Number 5. Alexander Wright. Since early June of 2021, a video of a random attack on an Asian woman in New York City was widely circulated and sparked outrage online. The unnamed 55-year-old victim was walking on Bayard Street in Chinatown when she was approached by a man from the opposite direction on May the 31st. In broad daylight, without warning or provocation, he then struck the woman in the face. The blow was delivered with such force that it caused the victim's cap to fly off her head. As shown by the video, she dropped to the ground and lost consciousness with her back against the supporting pillar of a restaurant terrace. The woman's injuries weren't fortunately deemed life-threatening. Her attacker was identified as 48-year-old Alexander Wright, who at the time had no fixed address. He had dozens of arrests on his record, which included armed robbery, assault, and drugs, dating as far back as 1989. There was an open case against him from an incident in the Bronx in July of 2020, when he'd struck a 72-year-old man in the face with a closed fist, causing injuries that required treatment in a hospital. He'd failed to appear in court twice in connection to that case. In another incident, he'd thrown hot coffee into the faces and eyes of 2 traffic officers, causing substantial pain and redness. The attack in Chinatown had occurred in the context of several similar incidents perpetrated against people of Asian descent, prompting the Stop Asian Hate movement. In the aftermath, Wright was charged with assault as a hate crime, and possession of a controlled substance. Number 4. Craig Tamanaha. On December the 8th of 2021, dozens of passers-by in New York City's Midtown area watched as Fox News' all-American Christmas tree caught fire. The 50-foot tall tree was soon engulfed in flames, and the suspected arsonist, 49-year-old Craig Tamanaha, was arrested at the scene. He'd climbed up the tree and set it alight using an accelerant before scrambling to get away. Upon being taken into custody, he reportedly told the detective, "I have been thinking about lighting the tree on fire all day long." Tamanaha was described as unhoused, emotionally unstable, and as having a lengthy criminal record that spanned approximately 2 decades. He'd caused roughly $500,000 worth of damage in the arson incident and faced a slew of charges including second-degree criminal mischief, second-degree reckless endangerment, and fifth-degree arson. None of them had felony status, however, since the attack hadn't outright targeted a person. A few weeks earlier, Tamanaha had been arrested by the NYPD for exposing himself in front of the United States courthouse as Ghislaine Maxwell's human trafficking trial was taking place inside. In May of 2022, Tamanaha failed to reach a deal with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for the Christmas tree incident. A new hearing was scheduled for mid-June, and while leaving the courthouse, Tamanaha was pictured showing the middle finger to the cameras. Number 3. Elina Parkin. An unnamed male college student was viciously attacked by a derelict in Leeds, West Yorkshire, England on September the 22nd of 2021. While the team was enjoying a night out during freshman week, he sat on a street bench to eat the chicken nuggets he'd bought from a takeout. He was then approached by 34-year-old homeless woman Elina Parkin, who asked him for money. The Good Samaritan asked if she was hungry and offered her some of his nuggets. Parkin walked away without replying. A member of the public then saw her smash a bottle before making her way back towards the student. The witness tried to warn him about what was perceived as menacing behavior, but he didn't hear them. Parkin, whom it later emerged was high on spice at the time, then stabbed the teenager in the face with the broken bottle. Witnesses intervened as the victim picked a shard of glass out of his face and took photos of Parkin, who managed to flee. The teen was taken to a local hospital where his cuts were treated and he escaped permanent injury. His attacker was tracked through CCTV. Upon being approached by officers, she grabbed another bottle and raised it above her head but was quickly subdued and taken into custody. Number 2. John Thackeray. In March and July of 2016, Australian man John Thackeray attacked 2 people and left them fighting for their lives. In the Melbourne suburb of South Yarra, the ice-addicted 32-year-old was found in March by resident John Anderson as he slept on the back porch of his house. Anderson, a man in his mid-50s, calmly told Thackeray it was time he went on his way. The drifter in turn stabbed him 8 times. One of the knife strikes pierced Anderson's heart, which resulted in him requiring life-saving open heart surgery. About 4 months later, Sean Fu confronted Thackeray, believing that he was in the process of stealing his car. The homeless man walked away but returned about half an hour later with a large knife. He plunged it into Fu's face and head while also slashing an artery in his leg. The victim was placed in a medically induced coma but, like Anderson, ultimately survived the attack. Had they not received timely medical care, both would have succumbed to their knife wounds. Following his arrest and during his sentencing for attempted murder in 2017, Thackeray was described as a very real danger to the community. He was consequently given a prison sentence of 14 years. Number 1. George Christopher Livingston. Police in Lake Worth, Florida, received a call in November of 2017 about a man who'd been found covered in blood while lying next to railroad tracks. The victim, 58-year-old David Beckett, was pronounced dead from visible injuries consistent with a violent attack. Responding deputies followed a trail of blood and discovered a 3-foot sword, which they determined had been used to inflict Beckett's fatal wounds. Another trail led law enforcement to a homeless camp nearby, where they found 51-year-old George Christopher Livingston, who had bloodied hands, one of which was wrapped in a bandage. Livingston, who sported a tattoo on his forehead reminiscent of a 3-point throwing star, told the police, "He attacked me," when asked about the cut on his hand. Livingston claimed to have defended himself from a man trying to abuse him and added that the purported attacker had repeatedly threatened his life in the past. He also told deputies, "Don't worry, that person is probably going to die." A witness reported to have earlier seen Livingston chasing Beckett with the sword before returning to the camp alone. He was arrested on charges of second-degree murder, and it subsequently emerged that the man had a history of legal trouble involving bladed weapons. He was arrested in 2011 for carrying a knife and a taser while at a children's play area in Boynton Beach, and in 2013 he was once again taken into custody for possession of a bladed weapon near a casino. Thanks for watching. If you were offered the chance to be the owner of a successful restaurant but weren't allowed to eat any of the food, would you take it? Let us know in the comments section below.